right, everybody, welcome back. This is the Hear the Unheard Digital Summit. My guest interviewee today, I'm extremely excited about Coach Chris Thomspon. Coach Thomspon, welcome to the conversation. How are you doing today, sir?
Good. Excited to be here.
Awesome, man. I appreciate your time. We'll dive into your background. We'll dive into, where you kind of fit into this conversation. But as a high school football coach, here local to the San Diego market, as well as my old high school football coach, you have very interesting perspectives and as well as an interesting voice to add to this overall conversation on how COVID-19 is impacting not only your players, but the team, the school itself. So super excited to have you. Thanks for your time in advance.
Cool, appreciate it.
So of course, I can tell the viewers a ton of stories. I mean, we go back, a number of years back when I was in high school, 03 to 07 at Mira Mesa. But let's let you tell the viewers for yourself. Who are you? What makes you an expert in youth sport arena, and where are you located?
Well, I'm in San Diego, California. Coach at Mira Mesa High School, which is about a mile north of Miramar Marine Air Base now. It was a naval air station, obviously when you were going there, affectionately known as Top Gun. So that's our big claim to fame, right? Kind of a middle class, blue collar, very multicultural, diverse high school, and right kind of in the middle to slightly north of San Diego. Again, graduated from there, grew up in the community, graduated there, coached there for a long time. Actually was gone for a number of years, about 10 years, I guess, and back now as the head coach. Taught there for a little while, did math, and I'm a math computer science guy, and the computer science football side took me away. I was actually vice president of digital sports video, which some of the old timers might remember that. But we were football editing software, sports editing software, was the precursor to what is now Huddle. We actually sold our technology and our client base to Huddle, what is now Huddle, which is all online. So we were just at the very beginning of the cloud wave and getting things up online and everything that's now normal for everybody. We were still kind of a in the building software platform that was migrating, and so again, I've got a unique perspective. Coach, this will be my 33rd year in high school football. Again, I've kind of operated mainly in the high school realm, but because of the DSV background, had a lot of contacts in college football and pro football, and actually coached a year in the Arena League 2 in Richmond, Virginia, and then obviously been in the classroom teaching math. So that's kind of my background. So
yeah, absolutely. Like you mentioned, there's a number of hats that we're going to address in this coaching, teaching, the tech backgrounds. I think the recruiting aspect of this chat is going to be very important. I had my own recruiting struggles when I was going through high school. I know there's a lot of players that I've spoken with over the years that experienced their own fair share of recruiting struggles. And now with COVID-19, there's a whole other set of recruiting challenges that now, seniors, graduating seniors, juniors going into seniors are now having to face. So it is a whole, topic of conversation we're going to try to unpack here. Before we dive into that, let's talk about the state guidelines. Let's talk about how they're impacting the program, how they're impacting the school. What does that look like from your perspective?
Well, yeah, I do have a lot of opinions on this one. I mean, I'm really frustrated on a number of levels. We're having to operate right now as an AAU club, which is what we typically do when we're out of the school year, right? So when we're in the summertime, we operate as an AAU, but because of COVID, San Diego Unified has, locked down the facilities since April, whatever it was, that they officially locked them all down. So, we're having to work in a park right now, which brings up, its own set of issues. Getting any kind of direction. I know we're all kind of operating without a net here, but what's football going to look like? What's, we're doing a lot of stuff right now in shorts, a lot of stuff on air, trying to keep your social distancing. Do we have to wipe everything down between every player? Do we have, is it, every period? So just a lot of up in the air, whose standards we're operating underneath. So, technically right now you've got your CDC standards, and then you've got, USA Football's got standards, and then you've got your state and county standards. And, so we're operating in a San Diego County park, so those override. And, and again, you're still trying to sport. So it's one thing when you're, opening up a restaurant, people are sitting down, they're getting up, leaving, and you're wiping the table down, you're doing all those kind of things. But trying to navigate this through a contact sport, has been a little bit tricky. But, we were out for about 3 weeks in July. Everything was well, no issues. We were getting work done, doing our normal stuff in shorts in terms of, speed work with Coach Basquette, and, doing a lot of that stuff, and then a lot of drill work on air, just trying to get terminology down, and, patterns down and things like that. And then we shut down for a couple of weeks waiting to see what the state CIF was going to announce. And of course we got pushed back to December 14th right now is what we're looking at as a possible start date, which, again, I'm probably less optimistic now that we're going to see a season than I was before we went into summer. But, we'll see. This thing, goes from day to day, week to week. I mean, what we're looking at in a month from now could be, way different, good and bad, from where we sit right now today.
Yeah, it's definitely a very fluid situation. Being on the ground on the soccer side, every day I feel like there's a different plan or a different solution or a different process that we're looking to explore. So I couldn't even imagine when you have all the red tape of schooling and then the actual physical contact side. There's a lot of other additional loopholes that you have to jump through. One thing that really is interesting to me is that, you are the consummate, I would say, player development coach. You have a unique ability to be able to get to the why of the player, the athlete is doing what they're doing. And as a player, that helps you develop tremendously, right? If you understand why you're doing it this way or that way, as opposed to whatever the alternate way is that you were doing, you can now learn and grow and develop as an athlete, achieve the potential, and so on and so forth. How is this, and your the coach's perspective as well, the other coaches, and I'm sure you're getting a lot of it. How is this impacting the kids? They're used to the routine, they're used to, certain things and going certain ways, and now all of a sudden it's just tossed upside down.
Well, yeah, honestly, and I have some very strong opinions about this. Early when this all started, our kids were a week away from spring break. So they were picking up an extra week off, so they were all, excited. It was something different. We did our first Zoom call after we knew we were going to be out. They were giddy and silly, and, as you can expect. As we went through, week after week, what turned into, 2 weeks now was a month, 2 months. You can really see the kids stop showing up. And you could really, feel it, through the Zoom calls. Like, it was just, everybody was kind of losing hope. And to me, that's the bigger issue because, when I looked at, and, again, the numbers now, being a math guy, the numbers that we're seeing and hearing on who's going to get sick, how they're going to get sick, who's going to, you can't believe anything. CDC comes out and, they say something and 3 days later they reverse it. So who are we supposed to believe? But, I checked on some numbers, and in our age group, first of all, the number one concern we have with this age group, 14 to 17-year-old, that high school, middle school kid, is suicide, right? And you got these mental health issues. And, so you keep hearing this, well, if we lose one kid to COVID, and I'm thinking, okay, well, what's an acceptable number for these kids, these high school seniors that have, put everything into being a scholarship athlete that don't get the opportunity to do that now, right? Or, that's their way out. They're trying to get to college somehow, and now they don't even get that opportunity. So, and again, I've looked at different numbers, saw a number that we lose like roughly about 200 kids a year to the flu in that age group, right? So last numbers when I checked, we had 30 kids in that age group that had died with or of COVID. right? So you're looking at those numbers, and then you're looking at what's going on, and we were out, like I said, for 3 weeks, and my health situation, I'm dealing with and battling cancer, radiation, chemo. I mean, I can't tell you the last time I've gotten the flu, and I have had no issues. I went through the whole season, went through January, February, March. We were training, not an issue. We didn't have a kid with an issue. We haven't had a kid with an issue. And so you're looking at all that now, and you're saying, okay, look at the other offshoots to all of this stuff. You know what I mean? Like the mental illness, that hopelessness, and if it ultimately leads to suicide, like that's not a good thing. And that's what I worry about more than any of it, is as we keep going down this path, is the damage that's going to be done on that side. And I get the other side of it, the older population, the compromised population, but I think there's got to be better solutions that we come to here in terms of our opportunity in this country, to make some decisions for us. I think that's been pulled out of everybody's hands.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned interesting points or perspectives on the auxiliary issues, the mental health, the suicides, the family abuse, being a child of child abuse. I have an interesting take or perspective on that end as well. All in all, there are a number of issues outside of COVID that we have to take into consideration that are being swept under the rug, for lack of better words, in support of or in conjunction of the fear around COVID-19. One of my other interviewees mentioned a stat that was very interesting. The calls into the suicide hotline increased 1,000% from April 2019 to April 2020. Those are statistics that you cannot ignore. Those are statistics that you cannot just sweep under the rug. These are people calling for help, and it's due to what we're doing as a society, these state mandates and the like. Have you seen any, or has there been any emotional or mental issues on your end? You don't have to dive into any specifics, but anybody being affected close?
Not so much with our group. I mean, I do have a lot of conversations with, and we only have only had 15 seniors last year. We only have 15 seniors going into this year. So we still have a lot of younger kids that still think, they're going to be able to play and have their opportunities. But of those 15, and what was interesting is the incoming ninth graders and some of the parent questions of, should I hold my kid back? Not believing in this whole virtual learning type of thing. The other part is, should we go to another state that's going to be open? Right. So again, I think parents, and kids are still looking for these opportunities, these avenues. And, the question is going to be, once those are all shut down. So like, Nevada just said they're pushing back. Right. So early it was like, well, kids may go to Nevada or Arizona. Utah's still open. New Mexico's closed or till after the first of the year. So, some of these kids, and how do you counsel them and say, well, yeah, don't go. We've got a kid that's just moved in. He's going to be a senior, military kid, and he's come in from Texas. And, I can't say that, if he said, hey, should I go back to Texas? The governor there just allowed them to go back to contact sports again. So he's opened them some things back up. And, I'm like, I can't tell them not to go,
Right.
Here's your opportunity. And, there's no guarantees that we're playing. I mean, there's no guarantees that they're playing, but right now, they're operating on the idea that they're going to play. Before all this, latest stuff that happened here in California, you have some districts in San Diego where, like the Poway district or the East County, those guys their athletes are on campus. They're doing stuff right now. We got to go find a park. So we are not technically underneath our district. We are a club. And so it's interesting in how, you can have two districts in the same city, take it, from completely different perspectives. And, again, that's the craziness of all of this is, well, what's right and what's not right.
Yeah.
So obviously, we look at kids' health, we look at all these things, but again, of course, all the numbers and information that I'm gathering, that this group is, they're strong, they're not going to get sick. And if they're doing the things that they need to be doing in terms of, and that's where the argument is. I mean, if you were to ask the kids what they're doing, I mean, they're not following any rules, right? So when they're with us, it's the only time there's any rules at all. You know what I mean? So I'm like, well, wouldn't it be better then to give them that structure back, right? Instead of them out playing themselves. Like, we found out our kids were playing the kids from Mount Carmel every weekend. They're not washing their hands. They're not social distancing. They're doing what they've always done because they're kids. And, and we've not had anybody, and nor, that I've heard that they've had any kids come up, being positive or getting sick or anything. So yeah, that's the frustrating part, because now you got the kids asking those same questions. They're like, Coach, why do we got to do this? Why do we got to do that? Well, because these are the laws and the rules now. And they're like, well, we're not doing that. Right. And then you get to the heart of it, and they're like, well, they're just still doing what they've been doing, and everybody's still good. So it's a little bit frustrating, to say the least. And so, like I said, us, because we don't have a ton of seniors, if I had 40 seniors, it'd probably be a lot different. Some of those schools that where those kids are looking down that deal, like, we're going to play, and how do I get to college now? Everything was banking on this senior year. So we've been spared from that for the most part. But if, what I'm concerned now is when we get to December, or let's say we get into November, when we're supposed to have, the whole flu season, right? And it's not looking good. Then that's where the other shoe's going to drop. Is when we start saying, hey, we're not going back on campus, and we're going to do virtual the whole year. All sports are shut down. Man, that could be dicey.
Yeah, that presents a whole other set of challenges. I couldn't even imagine being a student athlete right now, contemplating leaving the state, leaving my friends, leaving my family in this case, the one family, one purpose mantra, leaving that family in order to go play or go to a state that allows me to play in order to achieve a scholarship or to fulfill my dreams of playing in collegiate athletics. That would be just mind-boggling to me, to be in a position like that. Having the arbitrary guidelines as well, having one part of the city of San Diego following one set of rules and then having you and another following something completely different. It seems to me that we are painting with a broad stroke in a lot of cases, obviously socially distancing and masks and this, that, and the other. However, you're not focusing on each individual market or the solution for each individual market. High school athletics shouldn't be treated the same as the restaurant or the barbershop down the street. And that is one of my biggest issues on this whole entire thing. What are the aspects of injuries, right? You've had sedentary stagnation athletes for a long period of time. They're starting to pick back up. However, they don't have that routine. They don't have a gym that they can go to. They don't have a field access that's consistent. What have you seen in your end from injuries?
Well, right now, obviously we're not having any injuries because there's no contact, there's no competition.
Right.
What I'm concerned about is, as an example for us, now we're supposed to scrimmage Helix High School, which is, based on what they've got coming back and the kids that have transferred in, could be a state champion, big school state champion.
They're good. Very good.
And, they got a big returning offensive line, 6'4", 300-pound averaging offensive line. We're going to start the 14th of December. Then we're going to get to, then Christmas is going to be that next week. These kids, I mean, they're going to go to Christmas. They're going to be gone. They're not training. Then we're going to turn around and try to go scrimmage a team like that. Like, that's where the injuries are going to happen. Or, schools like Cathedral and Saints, the private schools, they've been in their facility now for, 2 months, using their weight room, doing all their stuff. They don't need any more advantages, right? I've got, these guys, they don't have weights. We can't get them in the weight room. So it's like you're going to put those two kids on the same field to compete against each other. I mean, that to me are things that we can look at and are predictable based on, time in the weight room, training time, access to all these things. And then you're going to go ahead and you're going to just discard that over, well, they might get sick, or, we really don't know everything about COVID and blah, blah, all that argument that we're hearing. And then we're going to turn around and go slam them into each other after, 7 days of practice. And I'm like, is this making sense now? You know what I mean? Like, Nobody's talking about concussion syndromes anymore, right? Like
Yeah.
that's been the last thing for the last, 4 or 5 years. And now I'm like, and so we're going to run these kids out. They've been doing nothing for the most part, not like they're used to doing since March, April. And then all of a sudden you're going to run them out there in late December, middle December, where they're used to coming out of their season. If you're in December, you're playing for a championship. So we've taken them out of their normal competition time, taken them out of the weight room, out of where they're building their bodies. And then we're going to try to go ahead and capture this now. And you're thinking you're not going to have all kinds of injuries. So it's just that, like you said, the broad stroke, it's not making sense on things that we do know. Things that we can predict, things that are, predictable in terms of what we've done year in and year out for, like in my case, 30 plus years. And so, that's why when you schedule, you're looking at that opponent going, okay, we're scrimmaging Helix to get a taste to try to get this program back to where it was when you were playing, when we were that team. Right. And so you scrimmage that so you can control and say, yeah, we bit off a little more than we can chew. So we're going to call it right here. I didn't schedule them as a regular season game. You're trying to build those things back up. So, we lose that. And certainly every decision that's getting made now, you're losing more and more of that ability to, develop kids, like you said, the right way, develop teams the right way.
Yeah, with a little, I'd say, proactivity, foresight maybe, and a little bit of common sense, you can see the impending sort of train wreck that's coming when you take kids who've been sitting, not able to be there in person, have that contact, and then you put them in a contact sport, especially when you're playing teams that hadn't had to shut down. It was very interesting as far as the private school aspect, their openness and the accessibility to their weight room and staff being as routine as possible. That seems like a interesting little tidbit information I wasn't privy to. Now, question for you, and I'm going to throw this off the cuff. Because this season, if it does happen, let's just say, does the winner, is there an asterisk on this?
Well, that's a good question. If we don't cut anything out, right now we're looking at a full season, regular playoffs, regular state playoffs. The answer would be no. If you don't, or if you do start cutting those games out, like let's say, and again, the part becomes what are going to be the protocols if your opponent, just like we had in Major League Baseball, so-and-so came up positive. So now you got, 4 teams shut down, right? Mm-hmm. So what is that going to look like now? I got to go quarantine my team for 14 days. There's 2 games gone, depending on when they actually start the quarantine. Then it's going to be, then it becomes asterisk. But if we're able to play the season and it's a full season, then I would say no. But, again, for our sake and what we voted, as coaches in San Diego, we voted, football coaches, that let's drop state playoffs. Let's push it back. Let's drop state playoffs. We can forego that because, again, there's only going to be a few of those teams, right? So it'd be, it would suck for the Helixes of the world, right? Because they have a really good potential team here, and of course they have different issues because they have some kids that could, early enroll into college. So those kids may not play now if we're playing in December, January, because they're like, okay, I'm going to college now. So certainly for them, it would affect them a certain way. But for us, I'm looking at this going, okay, if kids are able to play and get their film, I think that's the bigger issue. They're still able to keep their recruiting going. They're still able to keep their dream going. I think that's the end result. As coaches, we looked at that and said, to lose, the kids that we just lost in the spring, those, the baseball kids and the softball girls and the track, that's just a shame. Now we're gonna move on from it, but to continue to have that to happen, it's just a domino effect because, as you said, and we're not even talking about how are they going to change all this stuff in college? Like we're going to miss both recruiting, both dates that you can commit in football. I mean, you got the early commit in December, and then you're going to turn right back around in February. We're going to be playing, right? So how are those coaches going to really do their evaluations on those kids that needed to be looked at their senior year if everything's pushed back or they don't even get to play? So the NCAA's got some stuff to figure out, all these college because they're right now, I mean, kids are committing left and right without even visiting these major colleges right now. They're just being like, oh, I got an offer, I'm going to take that because I just don't know. And so, you look at that mess that's created. I mean, it's a mess. There's no other way to say it. I mean, everything is a mess. Again, it's frustrating because, at the end of the day, we're still going to come back to, and this is what's constantly, well, we don't want to, if we lose one kid to COVID, I'm like, guys, listen, we've already lost some kids to COVID, right? But now how many kids are we going to lose for these other reasons? How many kids are going to get, like you said, just being homeless, people losing their homes and kicked out on the street. And, that's where we're at. I mean, it's not good.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I love the melting pot of Mira Mesa, right? Being born and raised in Mira Mesa, you see all walks of life, income. There is a melting pot of culture, ethnicity, people, demographic. It is a perfect spot to kind of see this from 20,000 foot up. You have people who are going to be okay, then you have people who are in very struggling situations, and you sort of have to adapt and conform to provide help for all of them. Let's transition a little bit into what you are doing to help, right? Let's talk about the recruiting aspect first, just because we just left that topic. What are you doing to help these seniors? What are you doing to help these, potential college athlete eligible student athletes get to that next level?
Well, right. So like we've got, two upcoming seniors, class of 21 kids, and we've gotten, 2 Division II offers out. Actually just closed up one, a graduating senior. We'll be heading off to Division II that he took. Our process, literally you can identify kids now as early as freshmen because of all the training that's being done. Like, back when you guys were still playing, you kind of figure out who the freshmen were and if they were really good. And in sophomore year, you start to identify them. And that process kind of happens somewhere between maybe their sophomore year and their junior year. So for us now, it's literally like, I started 3 freshmen last year. I've got another incoming freshman this year that will probably start on the varsity. So we've already started that process, what they need to do, the type of classes they need to be in. Their names are on lists. I make, phone calls every day, text messages every day. That hasn't stopped. The kids prepare their highlight films. They're doing all that stuff. We got the transcripts ready. So, that's been a continual process that, obviously I can do from anywhere. That has not interrupted us. The part that's really interrupted us, again, we didn't get the on-campus spring visit from the coaches. That part is so key, for a lot of guys that they need to be able to see them. Or, then the next one is like you'll get kids and they'll be like, okay, well, I need to get them out to our camp. This kid needs to get out to our campus. I got to have, there's a little bit more investment in terms of they want to get more access to them, to get a feel if they're coachable, that some of the, the personality things, put them through certain drill aspects that, that they know that they're going to need and want to see if a kid possesses. So that's all been taken away. Now, guys have been really creative. Coaches have been really creative on some stuff, putting together like the virtual combine. Like that's one of the things we're looking at right now. We're like, we may have to go back and, go through and do, the height, weight video and a broad jump and a bench press and a squat and I'll put all that on video so that the coaches can access it. But there's still that in-person piece. So, in some degree, things are still as they've always been. The information is getting out. The names are getting out. The lists have been out. And, again, these coaches, the part here was that senior film. Like, oh, we really like him, but, he's an inch too short. Now you come back your senior year and you've grown that inch, right? Well, if we don't get to play, they don't really know. I could say they're an inch taller, but you know how that one goes over. All the guys that say they're 6 foot and they're 5'10", right? Everybody runs a 4.5 now. So that only goes so far. So the fact that, that's the disconnect, right? And that's the piece too that, I think that kids, when those coaches are coming out, they're watching your, they would come out and watch our practices. We do everything around that recruiting piece. So again, we would usually go more in the evening so these college recruiters could get out to our field to watch us do our work. And so, that's just been gone. Like, no spring ball, no on-campus visits, none of that stuff has been done because everything was shut down. So, it's kind of like the good news, bad news deal. Like, we do have 2 kids that, I've got 15 seniors. I've got 2 of them that already got offers, so that's a good thing because, percentage wise, we shouldn't have any, we shouldn't have any this year based on the numbers. But that's the work, that we've done. And of course, I've got that part figured out as a 30-year football coach. I'm just curious, and I quiz all these college guys all the time. Like, how are you guys doing this stuff? How are you guys? What's the changes? So when you're a big Power 5, when you're USC or you're Oregon, some of that stuff there, they're top of the food chain. Then you ask the guys at San Diego State, now what are you guys doing? Then it works all the way down from there. So, and that's where we make a lot of our money. There's a lot of schools that want football and basketball and soccer and all these athletes. But you can't get at them now because just the availability.
Yeah, that physical contact is huge, not only from the training perspective, but also from the recruiting perspective. I remember that's really how I excelled in college was, having those NFL coaches, CFL coaches come into the locker room and, have questions, ask questions, have a sit down, fill out the questionnaire, do those, basic interview stuff. The person-to-person, communication aspect is integral when it comes to transitioning both from high school to college and then college to the next step, whether it be NFL, CFL, whatever the next level looks like. Let's talk a little bit about what that communication looks like. I know you mentioned a little bit about the struggles that you were having with Zoom. Initially it was okay, and then it kind of tapered off or diminished over time. If you have to transition to Zoom as far as, the remainder of or throughout the next couple of months, and that is your primary means of communication, what do you foresee as challenges, whether it be learning the playbook or instituting or installing an offense, defense, so forth?
Well, we try to hit in all 3 modes of learning. That's probably the biggest thing. So, a lot of kids are visual. So again, you put all that stuff up, whether you're, making little videos or, I'm up at the board and I'm still doing like I would do. They're just watching it through their screen like we're doing right now. But that's the piece, like when you're able to engage that kid in the classroom and dig down to really check for understanding. I think it's too easy. Again, we don't even know if the kids got the video turned on. Like they may be like checked in.
Right.
So there's little tricks now that you're having to figure out as you change your teaching modes on how do if kids are even learning, how they're learning, how you're going to check. Did they even show up to the call? You know what I mean? Like, so literally I'm doing a lot of chasing around right now when, and as we divided everything up by position, much like colleges do. So I got my position coaches kind of doing that work with their group so they can get more in depth. But then I got kids not showing up. All right, so now I got to go back around and I'm calling or texting or trying to track kids down. Well, why weren't you here? Why weren't you on the call? Or why weren't, and that's probably the other part now is you got a multi-sport kid. It's not like all the coaches are coordinating that online time. You know what I mean? That's probably one of the biggest things I've kind of come across is, we got, I'm a big multi-sport guy. So, we got our wrestling coaches that are doing things and our basketball coaches that are doing things and our baseball coaches that are doing things and all with the right intent in mind. A lot of it is just engagement more than anything. That's what we've kind of used our Zoom more for was more maybe character training and leadership development. And instead of, a lot of the programming and all that stuff. We do a little bit of that, but again, for me, it's so video intensive that, the Zoom, trying to handle the Zoom and doing all that stuff and the playback and it's choppy and, again, the kids' equipment gets hung up or they don't have access to the equipment or, it's like a lot of those little deals there are probably more the technical side. So we've tried to look at it. Okay, what can we do? What's the best thing we can do to cover the biggest part of our audience? So a lot of it's just centered more on the character stuff and just trying to engage them, more on that level than from let's just say a teaching the game level. the installation and all that stuff. I mean, I can get that stuff done in 2 weeks. If you get me back on the field, that stuff's easy. Teaching them how to be good teammates and how to learn. We spend so much time teaching kids how to learn. You'd be surprised. They're so connected technology-wise, but again, they don't know how to sit down and engage each other in a conversation or a dialogue. And so we practice a lot of that stuff. And that was our big thing this year going in, was just a lot of following directions. It was amazing. It took us 45 minutes one day to just sit down, take off our shoes, take off our socks, put our shoes back on, tie our shoes up, and get in a certain alignment. It took us 45 minutes to work that exercise out. And again, it was just listening. It was just listening on what was supposed to be done. And then we put a little constraint on it, like, all right, we're trying to do this for time. Oh, it's comedy, right? But it just goes to show you. So, like I said, we're a little bit different that way. You talk about development. Like I said, we break up and look at a lot of, we're looking at the whole person. So, and being a technology guy, I was using Zoom, a long time ago. So I have a lot of tricks. So it's not like this is something new to me, but to them, it's absolutely brand new. You know what I mean? So just getting kids online and, clicking on links and their equipment working properly, because, they get on and just play games. You know what I mean? Like some of that stuff we just had struggles, technology wise, and that's we're a middle class community. It's not like we're, so we, a lot of those calls we'd spend, they'd be on the call for 2 hours. So now you got them, blown up because it's 2 hours. And then half of that time was just trying to deal with technology issues of getting them dialed in to be able to hear you or see what we're putting up, so we had to get through a lot of those hurdles.
Yeah, you were always one of the best person when it comes to focusing on character development, leadership development, things like that. As far as focusing on the X's and O's, like you said, that's pretty easy. But developing the whole man or the whole athlete, the whole student athlete, that's somewhere that it takes someone special. And you were that special coach in my life, no question. But you nailed it. You nailed the process, right? You nailed the routine that it takes. You can't just teach someone one day worth of character development and expect them to pick it up. It takes that consistent diving in every single day in order to build that whole man. Especially now where there is no physical distancing and you can't, sort of grab them and shake them a little bit and say, what the heck are you doing? Talk to me a little bit about the physical side of the equation, right? Now that they can't access the gym, now that they aren't able, to get in there and have access to the weights and get the training done, what are you guys doing, or what have you made accessible from a resources standpoint to assist them with their training and nutrition? Nutrition is a whole other side to this that we'll get in here. Training perspective.
Good luck on nutrition, man. That one, before all of this, that was a huge issue. So we would do things, Nicole, we have now a paid trainer position. And we would do those things to try to, secure stuff for the kids, especially on like game days or the day before, where it's so important what they're putting in their bodies. But, you still have that same issue where, these kids will come to school, not eat, or if they do eat, it's a bag of, Cheetos or, so they're not prepared to actually go out after a long day, get on the field and practice. Right. So we had that issue before all the COVID stuff came along. Now you heighten that because now I'm not even, when you see them out on the campus or you see them, in the locker room and you see what they're eating, now you can kind of at least get after them and be like, hey, give them some information and insight and guidance. We can't do that. I mean, we're not seeing them. I don't know who's eating and who's not eating. You know what I mean?
Right.
Obviously, and then we got some of our bigger linemen that, they're eating and it's nothing good. So that part is absolutely, and you got to kind of pick your battles. Now, that's another thing you learn after you've been in the deal for a long time. Okay, I can stress out over all that, but I have no control over it. So it's outside of, you know who you're really, we always talk about the intensive care list. We have some of our heavy linemen that you're constantly just, coaches, you got to hit them with a different message, check on them, what's he eating, ask the questions, again, keep talking to them about, good habits and what that looks like. But you don't get to see it. Cause again, you're not there. You're not, when he comes to school and you open up his backpack and you see what he's got in there for lunch. So that one's one piece. And then you come back to the physical piece, and now you've tried to give them answers if they don't have weights at home, like, again, resistance band work or, body work, like body weight stuff, mobility stuff. And that's what we kind of talked to them, like, look, you guys can do push-ups and air squats and, some of the mobility stuff, which, and, we've transitioned a long time ago. I'm not concerned about having the guy that can lift the corner of the building. Our best guys have never been our strongest guys. But there's a level of physical development that they all need to acquire. So we're still more based upon movement and, flexibility and mobility. And there was a lot of good stuff, but the NFL, a lot of different things that were starting to show up online, different type of workouts. So, we would get those. We tried the Zoom workout, again, another fiasco. So it was a little bit more, we kind of transitioned to position groups, the position coach, getting different online resources, forwarding that to them, doing things where they would have to like post stuff back up on Google Classroom. Like, we made it more of like a competition, like, okay, we're going to do a push-up competition. So you got to film yourself, how many push-ups can you get in 60 seconds? And we made it a competition. That was more our angle was, okay, they're kids love games. How do we, and how do we still promote that piece of competition? So that was more us being more creative and saying, okay, what things in technology are available? So, you got your Google Classrooms and your Flipboards and, some of the different football software that we use. And they would, get on their phone, just post it up, take a video of it, send it here, put it on the, we got a big Google, everybody's got our team Google Drive. And so they would post that stuff up, and then I would go through and I would check it and grade it. And, we'd make it, kind of, you get points and things like that. So that's how we were doing it for, again, that was kind of the end of the school year. As we've gotten to summer, there was that transition where we actually able to get out on the football field itself. Like I said, we were out there for 3 weeks, was for July. So basically we kind of July 1st, actually shouldn't say it was the last week of June. And then we got into like 2 weeks of July, and then we shut down. So then we just, got them back out on the football field because we were actually in a park, but baseball outfield. And we did some of that same stuff, trying to teach them now as we were in person, saying, okay, this is how it should look. So if we have to go back off, at least now we taught them when we had that little bit of time. So combination of those two things.
Awesome. Love it. Yeah, no, it's cool that you're still getting out into the household, doing the best that you can to communicate with these kids, these players, and assisting them any which way that you can. You've always been a chameleon as far as I've been concerned, adapting and conforming and taking what's been presented to you and making the best of it. Finally, before we dive out of here, let's put your teaching hat on, right? Let's come at it from the education perspective. If you are forced to communicate, or we transition fully out of classroom into this more digital learning, this Zoom-driven or Zoom-based learning, let's talk about what your perspective is on how that's going to turn out.
Yeah, lots of opinion. Obviously, I think there are some really good online programs out there that was their formulation. You know what I mean? That's how they formed it. They had a formula, and they've perfected it. Now, your traditional, public schools, brick and mortar, you're trying to make something fit. If I have to do that now, let's say I'm Mira Mesa High School, public high school, I'm going to go get my best English teacher. I'm going to go get my best, history teacher, math teacher that has some charisma, and I'm going to film the lessons. Right, I'm gonna do those more, that organized content. I'm gonna push that out to those classes. So not just Hey, this year I've got, teacher X, who's my math teacher. And again, every teacher's got their different strengths and weaknesses. Some of them are very good at what they know about the subject, but aren't great presenters, right? And you have other ones that aren't as deep in the subject, but they're really good presenters. So, kids, pick up and they're successful different ways. I would find some way to, again, to streamline the content. That video is there, the kids access it, they go through it at their pace. And then you got to find a way to, again, check for understanding in more of a one-to-one. That to me is where then you kind of organize your faculty and your aides and all that in some type of one-on-one engagement. Much like college when you your professor posts their office hours, right? And so you kind of saying, okay, no, this is, you gotta check in with me. And now we're checking and making sure work is getting done, that there is understandings. I think it's too easy for a kid to sit behind that screen and tell you they got it, because they're going to tell you they got it. And then we find out that we just lost another generation of kids. But, really that's where I think public schools need to start looking at, and these teachers that are used to teaching in the classroom need to, get those resources on how to be a good, effective virtual distance learning instructor, and because there's so much more, there's other ways that you got to pull in this content, and there are a lot of ways to pull it in. I mean, everybody's, now sitting at a computer, and you got Google, and you got all these different resources. How do we now reshape that to get the knowledge into the kids, the content into the kids, so that they are, true learners and can put it back out in a constructive in context. And that's so much of what teachers do in the classroom, is put the context to it, or at least the best ones that I've ever had. They're able to make that connection, because how many times kids will be sitting there and go, okay, well, when am I going to use this in life? You know what I mean? When am I going to use this Pythagorean theorem? And you, as a teacher, you've been hit with that question. How am I going to use it? Well, guys, it's not so much the Pythagorean theorem, but the process with which you got to a solution, right? And how you're able to take that maybe from a math situation, right? And then circle it all the way back, or at least that was me. Was always going to circle it back into a life solution, right? And what are the steps to make a good decision? You know what I mean? Do I buy this car? Or do I not buy this car? Do I go to this party? Do I not go to this party? Right? Well, here's, this side is this, and this angle is this, and now plug it into this formula, so that's the piece that I think that we're missing when that teacher is truly invested into their students and they understand how they all learn differently. Like, we get out on the football field, I got certain guys, man, I can just rip their ass and get after them, and that's how they get motivated. And you got other ones, and if you even raise your eyebrow to them, they can't handle it. So you got to find ways to still get them to be successful. And that, to me, I think gets lost a lot of times through all this virtual now. You know what I mean? Like, we're there, we are sort of communicating, but I me and you one-on-one is one thing, but, when I got that little, storyboard setting up there and I've got 50 kids looking back at me through my iPad, it's just not the same. So, and I don't know that there's a solution to that, to be honest with you. But I do think that that's what the better programs that come up and figure that out, how they, what, again, it might be, the one-on-one phone call. Maybe it's not through Zoom, but, at least I'm having a phone call, so I'm getting some type of engagement. But to me, it's going to be some mixture of that, or it's got to be some mixture of that.
Yeah. You know what it isn't? It isn't a broad stroke with one brush. It takes individual solutions. Yeah, I mean, if you want to figure out how to impact high school, you go to high school and you figure out solutions for high school. Same solutions for high school won't work for middle school and won't work for elementary school. Just like what you're doing for high school. From 100%.
High school on this side of Mira Mesa Boulevard, and the high school down on the other end. It's two different clienteles.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
and each student as well, 100%.
Class. So, I agree. I mean, obviously, but that's the hurdle, that's the challenge, and that's where so much this, if you let the control come back to it, and to me, it's the parent's responsibility, right? If anything, I think maybe, or I hope, where these parents have had to sit down now and start to be their kids' teachers, and they realize, oh yeah, like your kid could be a pain in the ass. You know, your kid takes up a lot of my time being immature, right? So now I'm being a hall monitor or a babysitter when I should be instructing the other 29 kids, but your kid's taking up all my time for discipline, right? So I think sometimes there's a lack of appreciation on the jobs that the good teachers do. Now there's teachers out there that, they're sitting behind their desk and they're not getting a whole lot done, but they're collecting a paycheck. But the one thing I do think coming out of all of this, what we know is the education institution is that model is going to change, and it's going to take on a whole lot more unique looks based on all these solutions, and every state doing something a little bit different than within districts and from one county to the next county, and what those are going to look like. So but let me make that decision as a parent, and then let's back that up. What is the principal? What are the teachers? What solutions are they providing for their campus, right? And then what are they inputting into the district at the superintendent level? And this is what we need here. This is what we need at Mira Mesa. This is what we need at Morris High School. This is what we need at Madison High School. And because that's what I am. I'm an advocate for my kids. I'm going to advocate for my kids. And that shouldn't be lost with the broad stroke, because we know them the best. This is what we need for our community. And, then we do the best that we can with the data that we have that's accurate. That's probably my next biggest complaint is, what do I trust? Like from what, if I can't trust what the CDC's putting out, then what? Because I'm sure as heck not going to trust what ABC's putting out or NBC. So that's really the frustration, at least from my end, and that's what I'm glad I'm close to the end and the beginning at 33 years. Like, that's the other answer. Like, what would you do? Maybe it's time to retire. I don't know.
Well, I hope not. You're too good for the game. But you hit it. Who would know better to keep Mira Mesa High School open than Mira Mesa High School? Who would know better to keep or open a safe environment for the football program than you? You can't expect you to be able to speak for Morse or West Hills or any of the others, just like you can't expect one person sitting in whatever they're sitting making decisions for the school or for the program itself. It's just silly to me.
And that's
all right, my friend.
Yeah, I was gonna say that last piece there, like. I don't want my kids to get sick, so I'm sure as heck gonna make sure our stuff is sanitized. And all those little things that go into it. Like, we're gonna be looking at our kids and, hey, do this, get your mask. Now I don't know everybody's gonna do that, but I sure as heck know that Gavin Newsom right now is not thinking about any of my football players because he doesn't know my football players, right? So who best to try to keep my kids safe than the one who cares about them? You know what I mean? So. That's my my soapbox piece right there. But that was fun. I appreciate it, and thanks for having me on. And let me know next time we can help.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate your time. Good chatting with you, Coach. Have a great day. All righty, that was the one and only Coach Chris Thomspon. Coach Thompy, great chatting with you. Hope you enjoyed the conversation, everyone. This is Austin Turner with the Hear the Unheard Digital Summit, signing out. Peace.